everyone, welcome back to the class. So for this week, we are going to turn the clock backward a little bit, goes back to the 15th, 16th century, and to see a very interesting love story between a courtesan and an oil peddler. Even if the time, space, all these conditions have been changed, but the love between the couples are maybe the same with the movie we saw last week. And also the way to representing love, the way to depicting love in a very sensual kind of method, in whether using a camera or using language, using bare word, may be the same as well. So the movie we saw last week and the novel we are going to read for this week share actually a lot of common. And we are going to see how they work together, portray us a very interesting map of how Qing is viewed by Chinese throughout history. So the title of the story we are going to read is The Oil Peddler Wins the Queen of Flowers, written by the author named Feng Menglong. So let's first take a look at who is Feng Menglong. So Feng Menglong is a literatus living in 1574 to 1646. And we can call him a novelist, a historian, and a poet, which means he writes both novel, history works, and also poems. He is also a very successful compiler, editor, and publisher, means he does a lot of this kind of commercial publishing and earns money from that. He never passed the imperial examination, which is the ultimate goal for literati living at that time. So he remains this kind of low-class literati. And some of his representative works include the Sanyan, which is stories old and new, or stories to instruct the world, stories to caution the world, and stories to awaken the world. The story we are going to read for this week is from one of these collections. And from the title, you can see he's trying to make some guidance for the world. That basically he collects a lot of stories, rewrite them, edit them, and to put them into different collections, make them like popular stories and to catering the reader at that time. And while they enjoy this entertainment, supposedly they are also learning something, learning how to love, learning how to behave, all these kind of things by reading. It's a little bit like the TV shows or educational TV dramas we saw these days. And these three collections are at pretty high status in the literary history. It together with Lin Mengchu's Pai are considered the Sanyan Pai. If you heard these terms, they are referring to this kind of very high achievement literary work. Other works of Feng Menglong including History of Qing. This is a very interesting concept and we are going to discuss a little bit later. And also Mountain Songs, so Shangge. Mountain Songs is actually a collection of all the rural songs or local songs singing by people from generations to generations. He basically did a field work and collect all these songs and made them, publish them into a collection called Mountain Songs. Apparently, a lot of these songs are singing by young people when they are chasing each other, are about their love experience, their longings for each other, those kind of things. A little bit about the genre itself, which is huaben fiction. That is the genre of the story we are going to read for this week. And huaben fiction came from the origin of storytelling, which means huaben stories are used to be told by storytellers on the street or on some specific storytelling house, which you can walk in, pay a little bit of fee, maybe buy a cup of tea and sit down to listen to someone tell you vividly a long story, just for entertainment and for fun. But at this time, this genre or this kind of format had been borrowed by literati to write stories. So you can see actually in the whole story, there's a lot of times the narrator will say, listen carefully, there's something you need to listen. So that action of listen or that narrator jump out, draw your attention to the action of listening is come from its origin of storytelling. But now we are reading it, but supposedly you still have that scenario inside of your mind, that setting inside of your mind, and you are supposedly still sitting there and listening to someone tell a story to you. And the language used in this kind of huaben fiction is vernacular language, but contains two components. One is a narration, and the second is a lyrics. So it is not a narrative language from beginning to the end. Even the majority of the time, the story is tell a story, but every now and then you will see there are some inserted lyrics, a poem or poem-like descriptive statement. That is pretty interesting, and I would like to hear your idea about why these lyrics are inserted at certain place and how they interact or together with a narrative tell us a story. And one very distinctive feature for this kind of huaben fiction is that before the main story, there's always a 入话, which you can call introductory story or introductory statement. So basically, because this kind of huaben fiction came from the storytelling tradition, so thinking about maybe like nowadays when you go to a movie theater, maybe the movie start at 10 p.m., but people will go like maybe until 10:15, they're still coming into the movie theater. And between the 10 p.m. to the 10:15, the storyteller needs something to comfort the people already there, but waiting for the people still coming into the house or coming into the theater. That is why they provide this kind of mini stories, those short 入话 stories, to entertain you, but also waiting for other people, so they are not the main story. But a lot of times, that this kind of introductory story or statement have something to do or relate to the main story. As in this story, you'll see the discussion about how to behave in love actually really closely related to the whole story. So this kind of two parts of making a story is pretty interesting as well. And of course, as I said, Feng Menglong want to write an educational kind of story to entertain people while make them learn something. So educational purpose is one of the distinctive feature for this kind of huaben fiction as well. But for the target readers, it's a little bit hard to say, because you will think of this kind of popular or even cliched love story may catering the lower status public or catering to the common people, but even the high-class literati also has some interest in those stories. So I will say, because the charm or the charisma of story is so strong, it can draw readers from all classes in the society. So this kind of huaben fiction, you can consider it as a pop culture or pop fiction at that time, has a wider audience than you thought. Just as today, for the kind of online fiction, actually everybody reads it, from professors to students to workers. So everybody, every class in the society will read those stories for entertain and to learn something. So the everlasting charm or charisma of stories is just cannot ever be overestimated, I would say. And let's talk about a little bit about the cult of qing. First is the cult of qing. So the idea of qing is very hard to translate from Chinese to English, and I don't think the academia ever settled down on one translation. So you can consider qing as simply love, or emotion in a broader sense, or sentiment, or feelings in a very broad, including the intensive emotion and not intensive emotion, all feelings. And it can be both moral or passionate love. So it can refer to narrowly to romantic love and can also refer to other love. Love for your parents, love for yourself, love for your friends. So it's kind of a very broad concept that can incorporate a lot of things into that umbrella. Now let's take a look at the contents of History of Qing written by the same author, Feng Menglong, to see at least what is his idea of qing. So here we see in History of Qing, he incorporates the virtuous couple of women, the destined marriage, the unlawful marriage. These three very directly pointed to romantic love, but he also includes the emotional knight errant. So that kind of refers to intensive emotion, that aspect of qing. And also the love with ghosts or spirits, that's trans-species love. And also the emotional revenge, that is more broad, not kind of limited in the romantic love, but also other kind of intensive emotion. So you can see Feng Menglong's definition for qing is also pretty broad and something very intensive, very emotional, centers on the romantic love, but not limited by that concept. And speaking of qing, we shouldn't skip this very famous statement made by Tang Xianzu in his very famous work, The Puny Pavilion. This is also one of the classic of Chinese love story, but due to the time and arrangement, I didn't incorporate this into our this semester. So this story basically, this theatrical performance, actually, this drama actually tells a story about a girl who was 16 and never getting contact with any man. And one day she goes back to her garden, family garden, and had a dream. And in that dream, she met a man and made love with him. And when waking up from the dream, she cannot help still missing the man in the dream and eventually die of that kind of longing. And the story ends when the man miraculously goes back to the garden, dig out the tomb of the girl, and find in the coffin the girl's body can reincarnate or can come back to life, and eventually they live happily together. So basically the idea is love can bring somebody to death and also can wake somebody from death to life. So he made this famous statement about love. He said, "Love is of source unknown, yet it grows ever deeper. The living may die of it, by its power the dead live again. Love is not love at its fullest if one who lives is unwilling to die for it, or if it cannot restore to life one who has so died." So basically, love is so powerful and can bring people from dead to life or from life to death. And also, if we turn to the History of Qing written by Feng Menglong, we will see he said, "It has always been my ambition to write a story of Qing, and ever since I was a young man, I have prided myself on being a Qing fanatic. Among my friends, I always bare my soul, sharing with them in times both good and bad. Whenever I met a person rich in emotion, I always want to show my respect to him, and whenever I see a person who lacks emotion and whose view do not agree with mine, I always try to patiently guide him with qing. I have said in jest before that I would become a Buddha to deliver the world after I die, because I cannot forget my love for the people of the world. And I will come to this world under the title Buddha of Boundless Love and Joys." So you can see, first, Feng Menglong claimed he is a qing fanatic. He is a love fanatic or emotion fanatic. And for the people who lack of emotion, he had this kind of passion to guide them with qing. That is exactly what he did in this story. That write this kind of love story to move us to teach us, to draw us attention to what actually love is, what actually qing is, and to teach us something. So that kind of passion is pretty interesting from a author standard, and we should keep that in mind when read the whole story. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the book market in the mid to late Ming China, which greatly influenced Feng Menglong's idea about Qing and his writing of these romantic love stories. So first, the time period is 1587 to 1644. So 1587 is the time when the emperor of the Ming start working hard and loosens all the restrict of the society. So the society became ever energetic at that time. And 1644 is when the last emperor, the Chongzhen emperor, commits suicide and the Ming dynasty basically falls. And the region we're talking about here is the Jiangnan area, which is south of the river in direct translation, the red circle area in this map. And it's a lower Yangtze region, and some of the feature of that specific region, that is also Feng Menglong's hometown, where Feng Menglong writes all these stories, and basically all these stories happened in that specific geographical location. So some features of that geographical location is that it has very rich natural resources and has a very dense population. A lot of people gather there, living there. And also, that is one of the wealthiest and most cultured spot in the whole China at that time. So you can see people, there's a lot of people want to read and want to read for entertainment. That is why Feng Menglong writes so many interesting stories, including love stories, to catering to that market. And about who, the majority of people writing these kind of popular stories are lower class literati like Feng Menglong. But who are literati? So first, literati are those people who received Confucian classic education when they was a kid, so when they are very young. And their ultimate goal is to pass imperial examination, get an official position, and to help the emperor to rule the country. Basically, that's the ultimate goal. But what if they fail? They'll have to go back home to be private tutors for other student literati. Or at this time, at the mid-late Ming period, specific time where Feng Menglong lives, they have another option, that is to become a merchant, doctor, or geomancer. That is why Feng Menglong chose to do commercial writing and publish. That basically is write for living. One thing that worth our attention is that the social hierarchy at that time is scholars, farmer, artisan, and merchant. So when a scholar or a literati tries to be a merchant, they basically downgraded themselves. And this social hierarchy is very, very strong and very strict. That is why we see in the story, the Oil Peddler, it belongs to the merchant class, and nobody cares about them. They only cares about those literati who can write poems, who has ability to enter the bureaucratic system. So those people earns all the respect. But merchant are those people who make money but nobody cares. That is why we call that time the sprouts of capitalism, or basically a flourish of market economy. So basically money, leisure time, and a need for recreation, and a merchant needs for cultivation, all these things together contributes to a very flourish book market. A little bit about a reading for this week, The Oil Peddler Wins the Queen of Flowers. This story actually has a bigger historical background, which is the Jing disaster in the Northern Song dynasty, hundreds of years previous to when Feng Menglong writes his story. So this story to Feng Menglong is also a historical story. And the Jing the disaster is basically the northern tribes conquers a large part of the northern China. So the court and the royal family, all these kind of a bureaucratic system has to move south. So people used to living in the north, now living in the south, forced to living in the south. And a lot of families are separated during this disaster. That is why we see the idea of finding your own family, finding your still living family members is so exciting for people in the story. And also for this version I assigned you, there's some commentary in brackets, italicized. You can ignore them, or you can try to read with them to see how people at that time read the story and make them their comments while reading the story. That's a pretty fun reading experience as well. Okay, so that's about it, and I really hope you enjoyed the story. As I said again and again in the class, this is one of my favorite love story, and this kind of live up to my expectation for true love, I would say. We'll have a discussion on Thursday, and I would love to hear your opinions. Don't forget to leave a comments down below, and I will see you on Thursday. Bye.